Hi kids, welcome back. Here's where we're at with this thing. Took me a while to get to make any progress on this, but I kind of got sidetracked. Here's what's going on. I have painted the top plate. The hammer finish paint is what I used. I take the turntable off. You can see that's the original color, which was, it's a funny color. It's a very sort of pale brown, almost grayish brown hammer finish. So I found this color, which is called oatmeal of all things, and it's browner. Here's the gold for comparison. See, there's side by side there, gold obviously, and just for the sake of argument, we'll drop the gold one in here just a second, and you can see doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look too bad at all, you know. But that's not. I think it's too gold for this, so I'm going to set this one aside. We're going to go with the oatmeal because, like I said, it's browner, which I think, since the player itself is brown, I think it suits it better having this little bit of brown in it. So that's what we're going to go with. So I wanted to show you that. It took me a while to get a decent paint job on it. As I've said before, I don't have a proper painting facility, so I'm always dealing with specks of dust and bugs landing in my wet paint and things like that. So one of these days I'll get a little paint booth built and we won't have these issues anymore. But that's where that is. So we're ready to move on. And what the next step is, I think I said at the end of the first video, was the motor. And so right away, because I forgot to do it, I was going to do it, I forgot to do it before we started, I'm going to take my phone and I'm going to make some couple of reference photos so that I can make sure I've got this going back together the same way it came apart. And it's easy to do on something like this because of the way they set these up. It's got a number on this side and a different number on this side. So I know which side I'm taking the picture of and see which way all of the... There's a screw with a couple of washers down here running all the way through this, and there's a washer and a nut, and then another washer and another nut on top. So I just want to make sure I've got this going back together the way I'm taking it apart. Take reference photos. First thing you have to do is get the old idler wheel off. And on an RP-190 changer, which is what this is, it's just held in place by a spring. So you take something like this and you just get under that spring a tiny bit and just kind of pry up on it with your finger there so it doesn't go flying. Get it started, and you just kind of do that until you can pop it off of there. It's just this tiny little, you know, spring, tight little spring. And then you take this off, and it's got all kinds of things going on in here. You got in the top. I have a metal washer and a fiber oil retaining ring. Okay, my dog Charlie the Wonder Dog is wandering around over here, so here's some funny noises. That's what that is. So we have metal washer and a fiber oil retaining ring in the top underneath that spring that I showed you, and then down at the bottom at the base of the shaft, you have to very carefully get under here because these like to break if you're not careful, is another one of those oil retainers. And I usually take this little pick to help me kind of ease it off of here. Just get one side at a time and kind of just worry it off of there. And you want to save those because that's, there we go. Alright, there's your other oil retainer. Hard to show you, but there it is. Okay. Alright, so that gets rid of that. Now this idler is toast. It's, you know, it's not too bad. I've seen a lot worse, but this one is, it's old and dried out. You can send these off and swap them for new ones, which is what I do there at voiceofmusic.com. And I think I showed you last time what I do with it. Yeah, I've got one right here, brand new one, ready to go. So now that we've done that, we take this plate off, this copper colored plate. So I've got my nut driver. There's two nuts holding it in place. Take those off. And like I said, we've got a nut and a washer. Okay, so we're going to move those aside, and that plate just comes off, and you have the shaft that the idler spins on, and this spring and arm arrangement to give it a little bit of play, and that just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. And we can talk about that. You can see how dirty this is underneath. It's got a lot of fuzz and stuff on it. So we want to take this the rest of the way apart so that we can get the rotor and the bearings out, so that we can clean the old oil out of the bearings and get ready to re-oil them. The first thing you do is I take my my dental tool here, I'm going to mark this. You scratch everything on one side. The top bearing and the bottom bearing, scratch them, and then scratch one side of the assembly. So I got a scratch on this part, a scratch right here, and a scratch down here. That way when I put it back together, I'm going to put them back in the same way I took them out, so that everything will stay nice and smooth. So now you can take your driver again. Oh, we're switching to 1/4 inch for this, I think. No, we're not. It's just loose. And you just take all that out. Like I said, you got a nut and a washer on top, and at the bottom you've got the screw with, this actually has, wow, three star washers. Wow. So I'm going to put all this back together like that, so I can keep it the way it's coming off here. The other one is shorter. Okay, this is the short side, and that does not. That's funny. That has a nut, but no washer. They're all different. Every one of these that you do is going to be different. Not every single one, but they are oftentimes they're different. This has, there it goes. This has the screw and 2 star washers, and then the nut without a washer, which is odd. Okay, so now that I've done that, I can pop this out of here, and there's your bottom bearing and your top bearing, and the rotor just comes out like that. Okay, and these are your bearings, and some of these are more sealed up than others. These have this sort of plastic arrangement here, there's usually cotton or some other material. It's usually cotton, I think, that's impregnated with oil in here, and the oil, of course, over all of the years has gotten kind of nasty. So we break out our giant pickle jar of naphtha, which is basically lighter fluid, and I just drop the bearings into that, and we're going to leave them there. And you can put the rotor in there too to get all the dirt and crud off of it. You can't hurt that. Drop the rotor in there too, and I usually leave that in there. Get a rag here. Usually leave that in there for, well, I'll just leave it in there overnight. Shuffle them around a little bit. I got them both sitting in there face up so that the naphtha can get down in there, soak in there. And then, you got room in there to put other parts in if you want. You can, a lot of these parts are going to need to be cleaned when we took the changer apart, and those can go in there too. And you can do that, or there's different things you can do. You can use carburetor cleaner. I've done that. You can use oven cleaner. It's best to get the low fume stuff. The Easy Off in a blue can is the one that most people use. That works very well. To get all of this old, this old fuzzy junk off of there, you know, although it's coming off just brushing it for the most part. But anyway, that's how you do that. You take it apart, you clean your bearings, and then when your bearings are, look here, what am I looking for? When your bearings are clean, oh, there it is, right behind my jar. Usually I let them sit overnight and soak, and then I take them out and drain them on a rag, and then I let them dry for a day or two to make sure that all of that naphtha has evaporated. And then I just give it a little bit of this, some turbine oil. Zoom Spout is the stuff to use. It's really good stuff. A super oil for all high-speed shafts and bearings. That's what you're talking about here. I mean, it's not high speed, 45 RPM, but, you know, it works really well, lasts a long time, does a good job. So that's how you do that. You just put it back together. After you oil it, you put it back together the same way you took it apart. The only trick you have to remember, I'm not going to show that process because it's just the opposite of what I just showed you. The thing you have to remember is when you're putting it back together and you put your bearings and your rotor in there, you put them in there loosely. And as you're tightening everything up, every once in a while you just tap or wrap the sides of it and tighten a little bit more and do it again as you're putting it all back together, and that helps seat the bearings and get them where they belong. And then you just put the power to it, and you can see how well it spins, and you'll know right away whether or not you know, if it's working properly, it'll spin the way it should. So that's that. That's how you do the motor on these. Next, we're going to be, I'll have that all back together next time, and then we're going to start going on this. Just this nice, simple little amp we've got here. We're going to replace the capacitors and resistors, and especially the electrolytic capacitors, because I'm sure they are toast. So that'll be next. So that'll do it for this segment. I just wanted to show you the progress, what little progress I've made on the painting the top of that and how to do the motor. And there you go. So stay tuned for part 3, and thanks for watching.